My name is Brice. I'm the youth director here. I'm so excited to be with you guys. If you were here last week, you were here as Robert kicked off a new series called I Am. Say I Am. And this whole series is all about learning who Jesus is. And so last week, Robert brought us an awesome message about what happened in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus, when God appears before a guy named Moses. And what we see is that God decided to give Moses his name. And his name was I Am. Or in the original language, it was Yahweh. And he said, hey, dude, here's my name. And what that means for us is that God has a name. And that we have an opportunity. God gives us his name, so we have an opportunity to know him and be with him. That the God we serve, the God that we just sang about, is actually a very personal God. A God who knows you and wants to be with you and who loves you. And so today we're going to build upon that first week because what we see throughout the New Testament is Jesus, who is God in the flesh. It's his son, and he comes into the world, and he gives us an opportunity to know who he is. And throughout his ministry, he says a few statements that all start with I am. And so what he's doing is he's like, hey, dude, I know you guys knew me. You knew my father in the Old Testament. I'm showing you a new representation, a fresh representation of who I am. And so if you want to know who God is, you can know him by knowing me. Just like he said I am, I'm also going to say I am. And I'm going to give you more context. And so today we're going to look at one of those phrases that Jesus said in the book of John. And it says this in John 8. It says, again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. And whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I am the light of the world. That's a powerful statement. But what does it actually mean? And that's what we're going to talk about today, right? Like, if we're being honest, who in here stays up really late, right? You know, like midnight, 1, 2, 3. Who stays up past 3? Y'all have problems. Get some sleep. Get some sleep. But we spend most of our time being awake in the daylight. Right? We're in the sun. We have lights on at home for the most part. We're used to being in the light. You know, we're awake during the day. Whether or not you stay up super late, eventually you usually fall asleep when it's dark. And since we are so used to the light, we don't actually understand how crucial and important it is. We sometimes take it for granted because we're not always in the darkness. Right? You don't really appreciate the light that a lamp gives you if you turn it on in the middle of the day, because it doesn't really feel like it's adding anything. And so in order to really understand the power of Jesus saying, I am the light of the world, you have to understand what he's saying the light contrasts with. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Light, you begin to appreciate light in the context of darkness. Who in here is afraid of the dark? It's okay. We're all grown. We can say it. What up? Like, my name's Brice. I'm scared of the dark. It's cool. I don't like it. It's fine. Okay, since we're grown and we're not afraid of things anymore, who was afraid of the light or afraid of the darkness when they were little? Okay, yeah, like last year when I was a kid, I was so afraid of that, but I'm grown now. See, I'm okay with the darkness. No, I have always just not really been okay with darkness. It's it's fine, but really when I was your guys' age and younger, darkness did something weird to me. So I have a vivid memory of sleeping in the basement. We had a finished basement. That's where me and my friends, we would always go down. We'd play video games. We hang out. And then eventually we fall asleep. And we were hanging out. And then one of my buddies, turns out we had a sleepover. And he had to leave early for a sporting practice or something. And I wake up and it's 4 or 5 in the morning and it's dark. And it's pitch black. And I'm 16. And I shut down. I put the blankets over my head. And I'm like, God, if you're there, God, just get me out of this. I was not a Christian. I was just God, please help me. And then honestly, really what happened was I was okay, I talked myself up and I threw off the blanket and sprinted up the steps, just to make sure nothing could get me. Or, okay, and a very realistic example, raise your hand if you sprint up the steps because you're afraid of the things that are behind you. I mean, come on. That's the message today. I did that. So I don't have I don't do that anymore because I don't have those kind of stairs, but a couple years ago, literally 2 years ago when I did, I sprinted up those stairs every night. You're okay, I got to flip the switch, I'm going to go. Or else it's going to get me. And I don't even know what it is, but some demon is about to snatch my ankles. So we're and we sprint up the stairs really quick, and you jump in bed and throw on your covers and try to fall asleep, and you're sweating and your heart's beating so fast. That's my life. Or as a kid, oftentimes I'd be laying in bed, and maybe you did this. And by a kid, I mean like 8 years and younger. I grew out of this eventually, sometimes. And I would it gets really dark, and I was afraid to sleep with my door closed because I'm like, if the door's closed, somebody's gonna break in and snatch me, and my parents will never know. And so I also hated the dark, and so I had a nightlight, like one of those that you put in the wall, and it's so nice, and it's cute, whatever. And then it wasn't working, and so I wake up, and it's pitch black, and I'm 7, 8 years old. And so I'm sure my parents got so annoyed because all they would hear is from my room is, Dad, I'm scared, and just start yelling until progressively it's shut up. No, he would come in sometimes. Those are all just funny examples, but let's be honest. There's something unsettling about the dark, right? Like something that is universal across the room. When we were little, most of us were afraid of the dark, and the older we get, there's still something unsettling about the darkness. And so what is it that actually makes the darkness scary? Well, what could be in it? Absolutely. You can't see. That's another thing, is you can't see it. So is it there? Is it not there? Is it going to snatch you? Who knows? You don't know what's in it. There's just something about the darkness that kind of inherently feels evil. Something about the darkness inherently feels evil. And this isn't just something we experience in our day-to-day life. This is something that very realistically we read about, we watch movies about. Every big movie franchise and book franchise has to do with light versus dark, right? Good versus evil. Those are the classic stories we read and we watch. Like Harry Potter literally is light versus dark. It's good versus evil. Star Wars, I mean, come on, the dark side of the Force, right? It's everywhere. The Hunger Games is some light versus darkness, good versus evil. Lord of the Rings, any Lord of the Rings fans? I got 5 of y'all. What up? I love Lord of the Rings. But it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in every narrative that we read, in every movie that we watch. And there's something inherently evil about the darkness. And when we come face to face with it, it makes us realize that there's something scary about it or uncomfortable. There's something about the darkness that doesn't sit well with us. And now I don't know, I know for a fact that we're not fighting Voldemort every day. There's not really a dark side of the Force. But we actually have very strong examples of darkness in our lives. Maybe you experience mental darkness. Maybe you're in here and you struggle with mental health issues. You struggle with identity, or you have anxiety problems. Maybe you're just overall sad, or you have a depressive disorder, or you're super stressed. There's mental darkness that we experience every day, and there's something unsettling about it. It's this just isn't the way it's supposed to be. It can be scary at times. Or maybe you're in here and you experience relational darkness. Maybe your parents are divorced or separated. Maybe you've had a really bad breakup and it destroyed you. You've had broken friendships. You live in a split family. Sometimes family dynamics can really show us how hard relational darkness can be. Or maybe something that we all experience is spiritual darkness. And I know that might sound weird and that kind of sounds churchy, but that's the condition that we live in. The Bible tells us that we live separated from God. Separated from God. And so as a result, we experience things like sin and darkness and death. Literally death. That is a sign of the darkness, but also death in our lives with relationships and friendships and the mental darkness and all these different things we experience with lack of purpose. Or you look at the world today and you're just man, there's so many things physically in the way that there are different social constructs and different issues in society. Man, it just seems so dark. There are wars and there's hunger and there's poverty. Every facet of life you look at, it seems like there's some kind of darkness. Whether or not you're experiencing it right now or not, it seems like the darkness is all around us. And the one thing that is true for all of us is spiritually we're separated from God. That's how we all start. And that is a spiritual darkness. But the good news, and this is what I kind of want to bring us back to today, is what Jesus says to his followers. And like I said, you only really begin to comprehend and appreciate the light when you compare it to the darkness. And so Jesus then tells all of his followers, he says this in John 8:12, he says, again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world, and whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And this is a crazy idea then. If we are all saying that we experience darkness in so many different avenues of life and so many different aspects, and Jesus comes in and he says, I am the light of the world. I know you're experiencing darkness, but I am the light. And so whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. What he is saying is, I'm giving you an opportunity to live differently, to turn the lights on, to experience life and light the way that you were supposed to. Right? We experience darkness in all these different areas of our life, and let's be honest, it's like sometimes in life it feels like we're stumbling through like the darkness. You're like, I don't even know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. Or in this relationship is hard. I feel like it's filled with darkness. I don't even know how to get out of this mess. Or a sin problem. Maybe you're in here and you struggle with very hard sin things, sin problems, with lust and self-control. And you're just like, I just don't see the light. I don't see light at the end of the tunnel. How do I get out of this? We all experience all these very strong examples of darkness, and sometimes we actually understand that walking around the darkness is difficult. Have you ever gotten out of bed in the middle of the night trying to find the light switch and trying to make your way to the bathroom? It's like me every night. And you're like, you stumble over everything you left on like the floor the night before, like your backpack and your crutches and your sports bag, and your cleats that are like, the cleats are facing up, so you step on everything and it hurts. And you can't find the light switch. That's kind of what Jesus is saying, is like, that's what living life without me is like sometimes. And so to help us understand this, I'm gonna need a volunteer. Robert, Abby, if you guys can help me with this real quick. I need a volunteer. You right there, blonde hair, come on up. Come on up, bro. Make some noise, make some noise. Okay. All right, you're gonna come over here, and before he sees where these are going, I need you to get blindfolded. Do you trust me? That was not a confident yeah, but that's okay. We're gonna blindfold him, okay? Because this is kind of painting a picture of where we're at spiritually. The Bible says that when we are separated from God, we are blind. We can't really see, right? We can't really see. Can you see anything right now, bro? How many fingers? He can totally see. Okay. All right, here's what we're also going to do. Abby, you're going to hold your hands over his eyes. Yep. Now how many fingers? No, it was still 2. Come on, dude. I made that easy for you. Okay, so this is what life is like when we're apart from God. When we don't have a relationship with God, we're blind. We can't see. And sometimes when we go through life, there are things that we have to navigate. Life is not a straight shot. There are obstacles. There are things in our way. There are relationships that sometimes you just got to step over and forget about. There are sin problems you kind of need to weave in and out of. There are friendships. There are things in our life that we have to navigate. But the problem is he's blind, and on top of that, it's also going to be dark because the place that we live is filled with darkness. Let's hit those lights if we got a chance. Awesome. Okay. This is the example. Listen. This is the example of the life that we live in, okay? You guys got it? We live in darkness, but Jesus says, I am the what? Light of the world. But, all right, hey, can you cover his eyes one more time? You're going to kind of walk with him because he can kind of see. I know it's dark. Well, okay, why don't you go ahead. Hey, buddy, what's your name? Chase. Why don't you come to me, Chase? Yep, just keep walking towards me, Chase. Oh, you're bumping into things, bro. Okay, yeah, just keep coming to me, man. That's great. Oh, dude, you're bumping into everything. Okay, you can take him back now. Guide him back. Okay, when you're living blind in the darkness, it makes it really difficult to see the light, right? Right? Okay, go ahead and take off the blindfold. All right, dude, can you come over here? Follow the light. Yeah, dude, just weave in and out. Dude, make some noise for Chase. High five me right here. All right, you go take a seat. Okay. Silly example, but does it make sense? Can you see it? Can you actually see what's happening here? When you put your trust in Jesus, he says, I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. And so what happens when you say yes to a relationship with Jesus, the blindfold comes off. And you can see him for who he really is. And in the backsplash of a dark world, you can actually begin to see the light. And that way you don't have to stumble through life anymore. You can actually follow the light. and experience life the way that you were intended to live it. And it doesn't mean that when you trust in Jesus, the darkness goes away. Right? When the blindfold came off, the darkness was still here. The world was still dark. But in the midst of the darkness, he was actually able to see the light of the world. He was able to navigate the things in front of him because he was following the light of the world. And that's my heart for you guys to understand, is that following the light leads to life. Following the light leads to life. Because of sin, we have a blindfold on. And we're just stumbling our way through lives, through relationships, through mental health issues, through jobs, through success, through school, through college, through your one-day marriage. You're stumbling your way through all of these things. And what Jesus is saying in this instant is, I am the light of the world. And whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Because when you put your trust in Jesus, when you give him your loyalty and your faith, the blindfold comes off. The blindfold comes off and you can see clearly. And you can see the light. You say, no, I'm going to go that way. I'm going to go that way. I'm going to walk in the light that Jesus is providing. I'm going to walk in the way that he has made for me. That is the beauty of a relationship with Jesus. When you trust in him, the darkness doesn't go away, but he gives you the light to navigate the darkness. You know, Jesus came to give us an opportunity to experience life the way that we were meant to experience it. And unfortunately, this world is filled with darkness. You're going to have heartache. You're going to have pain. And there's going to be moments of suffering in your life. But when you trust in Jesus, he starts to show you the way. And he gives you purpose in the pain. And he makes a way where there was no way. And he shows you how to navigate some of the world's problems and the darkness. So you can experience a life filled with life, and a life filled with purpose, and a life filled with healthy relationships and making wise decisions, life the way that you were intended to live. And so there's a couple different people in this room that I want to speak to just real quick as we wrap up. I want to give you guys different applications based on where you're at in life. You know, I believe that there's some of you in this room that need to take off the blindfold. There's some of you in this room who have never said, I want a relationship with Jesus. There's some of you in this room that maybe have played the part of church, that you've gone to church your entire life, or you've come around youth night, you went to 514 Kids, and you went and you said the right things, but you never actually gave your heart to Jesus and said, no, Jesus, I believe that your way is better. I believe that you're the light of life. Maybe that's you. Maybe this is your first time here, your second time here, or you just started coming this school year, and this is the first time you're hearing this, that God loves you, that he died for you, that Jesus, God in the flesh, left heaven, came to earth, and lived a human life free from sin. He never sinned. He never sinned. And what he shows us is that there's a way that we can live. There's a way that leads to life, and it's by following him. And Jesus dies on a cross and pays the penalty for our sin. He takes on all the darkness and all the death on the cross, and he dies with it. And then 3 days later raises back to life with life in his hand and says, do you want to follow me? You don't have to die anymore. You don't have to experience all of those things. Like there's a different way. There's a better way. Put your trust in me. The blindfold will come off and you'll see. You will see. And so there's some people in this room. I just want to challenge you tonight. Talk to your small group leader. Maybe this is you. Maybe you need to take off the blindfold for the first time. Or maybe you're in this room and you're like, no, I've been a Christian. I've been a Christian, and so the blindfold's off, and you see the light, but you need to actually make the conscious decision to follow the light. And what this means is you actually need to learn about who Jesus is. The room is dark, and you see the light, but you're like, I don't know if I really want to follow that. Like, I trust him, but I kind of want to follow some other things. I want to follow what the culture says. I want to follow what I feel. I want to follow this celebrity. You know, I want to do what I want to do. But what Jesus says is, no, I am the light of life. I am the light of the world. If you want to experience freedom and purpose and meaning, it comes by following me, by following Jesus. And so if you want to follow the light, you got to learn who Jesus is. You got to open the Bible. You got to open the Word of God. It's the way that God has showed us who he is. It's only through that text that we're really going to be able to understand him. And how do we really begin to understand the person of God? You want a good place to start? Read about Jesus. Jesus is the representation. He is God, but he's the representation in the flesh. And so if you want to know what God is like, learn about Jesus. See what he was like. Follow that light. Don't follow the other things that call themselves light. Everything else that tries to promise you life, money, sex, relationships, what culture says, none of those things will actually provide the life that you want to experience. Sure, it may be fun for a while, but it's going to leave you empty-handed. Those things always overpromise and underdeliver, but the thing that never overpromises and underdelivers is God, right? So follow God. He says, I am the light of the life. You want to navigate the darkness? Follow me. And then there's one more group of people in this room. I'm wrapping up. And you actually need to choose to walk in the light. If I'm standing here and I see the light over there, is it good if I just stand here? You got to move. You can't, it's not enough just to put your faith in Jesus. It's not enough to just see Jesus. You got to start moving. Faith is not a static word, it's an active word. It's not something that's meant to stay still. It's something that is dynamic and moves. And so as you put your faith in Jesus, you start to take who he is and the practices he gives us and what he says about relationships and what he says about life and meaning, and then you start to move and incorporate it into your life. Some of you guys are learning about Jesus and you're coming to youth night, but you're still living the wrong way. Or you're neglecting parts of your life. You're not really talking to God like he says we should. Like, oh man, I just don't know if I really want to pray. I think it's important, but I don't want to do it right now. Or maybe, you're living in certain sin cycles, and you're like, I know, I see Jesus, I read about the things that he tells us to do. I've heard messages about how I should have like certain kind of boundaries in relationships, but I don't know if I want to walk that way. I don't know if I want to live that way. There's so many things that the Bible tells us, hey, like this is a good way to live. You want to experience life and purpose? Follow. And then walk in the way that he's provided. So some of you guys, you need to actually get in the game. You need to actually apply the things that he's saying. Okay, this is how I should talk to my parents, all right? I'm going to honor people. I'm going to encourage people. I'm going to do my homework, not because I like it necessarily, but because I'm told I should do all things to the glory of God. And so I'm going to do that thing that I was told to do. And I'm going to honor my girlfriend, and I'm not going to cross that boundary because I want to respect her and because I believe that God has a plan for marriage, and that doesn't look like what culture says, but I'm going to choose to honor that because Jesus says following him is the light of life, and so I want to experience life, so I'm going to follow him the way that I should. So I'm going to say no to that thing. I'm going to say no to that party, and I'm going to say yes to Jesus. That's what it looks like to walk in the light. And you can't have it both ways. Who are you following? Are you following Jesus or are you following something else? The Bible says that you can't serve two masters. Who are you serving? Are you serving Jesus? Are you following that light? Are you still stumbling around in the darkness trying to find something else to lead you? But there's one source of light, there's one source of life, and that's the one who created it, and that's God. I have one last thing that I want to share with you. I know there were a couple people in this room who were Lord of the Rings fans. And it's just a quick quote. It's actually a really long quote, but I'm going to read it. And here's what happens. Here's the context, okay? If you don't know anything, it's a big battle between light and darkness. And Frodo and Sam are getting ready. It's the second movie. It's the second book, the Two Towers. And they're about to go throw this ring away into the volcano. And they're just getting battered down by darkness. If they feel like there's no hope. And this is what Sam says to Frodo. He says, it's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in these stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something, that there's some good in this world and it's worth fighting for. I want you to know that the darkness is a passing thing. It's a shadow. And just like every night must end and every shadow must pass, the darkness that you are experiencing in this life will one day go away. And the Bible says Jesus will come back and wipe away every tear. But in the meantime, he is the light in the darkness. He is the light of life, and following him is the way that we get to experience life the way that we should.